Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Daily Devotional. Our devotional today is going to be on the shorter end of things today. There's an article that I want to look at. It has no religious connection whatsoever, but there's one particular point that I'd like to make as kind of as a application from this article. So the title of the article, this was posted back on September 8th. Student mocked by adults after sharing personal COVID-19 connection at school board meeting. So I'm sure most of us are aware of a lot of the unrest that's going on in our society and in a lot of school districts, and both with the mask mandates and vaccine mandates and so on and so forth going on. And obviously, we're certainly entitled to our opinions on things, and within the realm of our rights as citizens, we certainly can practice those rights and practice the freedoms we have to express our thoughts and opinions and certainly vote that way. But also remembering at the same time that as Christians, we are to obey those laws that our leaders enact. Whether we agree with them or not, whether we like them or not, as long as they do not cause us to, by obeying those laws, cause us to break the law of God, we should be in subjection to those rules. So, this article starts out, it says, another mid-state school, this is Murfreesboro, Tennessee, by the way. Another mid-state school board meeting is making national headlines. You might remember the one in Williamson County that got out of hand in August. Rutherford County is now in the spotlight. The focus of each one has been face masks in school. This time last year, my grandmother, who was a former teacher at the Rutherford County school system, died of COVID because someone wasn't wearing a mask. Grady Knox, a Rutherford County student, said. Knox spoke in front of the Rutherford County School Board Tuesday night in favor of a mask mandate. He tried to continue his speech but got interrupted by laughing and heckling from adults in attendance. The school board chairman ended up stepping in. "Hey guys, we're here to act professional," he said. "It was complete insanity from my perspective," Knox said. This is the young man who was standing up to speak. Knox is a junior at Central Magnet School. He said he could not believe what happened. "If they laugh at me about a personal story about my grandmother, that's just disrespectful, I feel. So I was shaken a little bit," Knox said. Board members like Claire Maxwell said the reaction from some in the audience did not sit well with them. "We all wholeheartedly, all 7 of us, were ashamed about what happened, and we want to make sure nothing like that ever happens again," Maxwell said. 2 minutes of the roughly 3-hour meeting have now spread on social media. Knox said, "It's not a reflection of Rutherford County. I hope that they can see that there's people like me who want to see change and look past all of the hecklers." For Knox, he said the laughing will not stop him from speaking up again. "As long as I can get my message across, I don't really think it matters what the crowd thinks of me. Overall, they're not the ones making the decisions for the school." School board stood at a work session Wednesday, them making a statement about the video, and specifically, there's we don't need to watch the video, but the point of it is this young man got up to speak in favor of a mask mandate. And whether you agree with him about the need for mask mandates or not, okay, everyone's entitled to their opinion on that, and certainly everyone has an opinion on that. But whether you agree with him or not isn't really the question here. The question is it right for these individuals, and I don't know who all was there, and I don't know who all was involved in this laughing and heckling from the adults in the audience. But I want you to for a moment, imagine that there was a member of the Lord's body there. And I have no reason to think that there was, but just imagine with me for a moment that there was a member of the Lord's body there. What type of an example, what type of a reputation would that then set for individuals if it were learned that this individual or multiple individuals were members of the Church of Christ here in Rutherford County or wherever it is they are, and they were there laughing at this young man because he was in favor of a mask mandate, and he was talking about how his grandmother died, and these Christians were laughing at him. It just kind of got me to thinking about our example, no matter where we are, especially right now when we're dealing with such a politically charged, ideologically charged climate, especially revolving around COVID, the masks, the vaccine. Certainly, there's the fact that there are certain principles, certain aspects of American culture and American freedom that some are of the opinion that the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, and so forth, they infringe on that. I completely understand. Having said all of that, as Christians, our identity as Americans and our beliefs and convictions as free Americans has to take a back seat when it comes to setting an example as a Christian. We can be patriotic. We can stand up for our opinions. We can vote that way. We can share our opinions with others. We have that right. But when it comes to our example, the example that we set before others, a lot of times there's this phrase, and we've heard a lot of it, called mob mentality. Really, it kind of gets a very negative or very sinister connotation to it, and because usually it's connected to bad things happening. But really what it describes is kind of a pack mentality, that when you're with other people who think the same way you do, it's easy to kind of all jump together and react a certain way and set a certain example, that if you were by yourself, or if you were more aware of the example that you personally were setting, you might not do otherwise. And it's very important that as Christians, again, regardless of on what side of the spectrum you are politically or ideologically regarding the American freedom and vaccines and the masks and so forth, regardless, what happens when we're around other people who think the same way we do can cause us to act in ways that perhaps we wouldn't ordinarily act. And some of these individuals who were laughing and heckling at this young man, I think it's completely uncalled for. Regardless of if you agree with him or not, obviously this group in the audience, they didn't agree. They didn't agree with him. Perhaps they thought he was overreacting, or they thought that he was making a big deal out of nothing. His grandmother died, whatever. They dismissed his concerns. They dismissed his opinion as if it was silly and it didn't matter. First of all, I don't believe that anybody should be treated that way. But what if, for instance, and again, I'm not trying to call this lady out or anything, but this lady back here in the background, okay, this is a screenshot from the video, but she was one of those in the audience who were laughing and heckling, apparently. And what if this lady, come to find out, was a member of the Lord's church? And what kind of example would that set? Again, completely taking the politics out of it, the ideology out of it, mask mandate or no mask mandate, taking all of that out of it. When you're disrespectful of others, that can have a lasting impact. And whereas you would have an opportunity to talk to somebody about the gospel or invite them to church or whatnot, well, you've got those people at your church who were laughing at that poor kid who lost his grandmother to COVID. And I say all of this to really bring up what we find in, in Colossians chapter 4, when Paul makes a statement in verse 5, he says, "Walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, redeeming the time. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one." It is so easy to forget, especially right now. It's probably always been a problem, especially when you had hot button issues. I'm sure the same was true back with the Vietnam War and and the Korean War, and anytime there was a hot button issue, I'm sure that there were these struggles and these times. But perhaps maybe it's a little bit more pronounced because of social media, because people have such access, immediate access to people's reactions, and to people can look people up from just a name or phone number or whatnot, find out they're a member of the Church of Christ and so forth. But it's so easy to forget that we are to be Christians first in this world. And it doesn't matter as Americans, no matter what country we're in, that while physically in the flesh we are members of citizens of those countries and certainly susceptible to those laws, we're Christians first. And that being the case, as tempting as it may be to rally behind certain patriotic or ideological thought processes regarding freedom and so forth, we have to temper those reactions. We have to temper our example when we're with others. Can we express agreement with what certain things that people say? Sure, we can express agreement if they're saying things that we agree with. But at the same time, we have to be very, very careful that we are still setting an example of one who is a Christian first and an American or an Australian or whatever second. That we focus on being an example of what a Christian is supposed to be in this society. To whether individuals we're around are Republicans or they're Democrats or they're independents, whether they are in favor of mask and vaccine mandates or against, whether they are members of the media, the media at large, or members of whatever type of system maybe that we think is sometimes unfair to things. Regardless, we have to be mindful of our example. And Paul, when he says we are to walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, redeeming the time, we need to be aware of ourselves. We need to make the most of the opportunities that we have, because it would be a shame for us, in our desire to practice our freedoms and our rights to protest or express our opinions for whatever's going on in our country at the time, it would be a shame that in the process of doing that, the way we go about it should throw a stumbling block in another person's way from becoming a Christian, or from searching out the truth, or from they find out we're a member of the Church of Christ and I'm not going to that church because of how they treated that poor young man who was talking about his grandmother who died. It didn't sit well with me either. That was mentioned in the article that the school board, that it didn't sit well with them that they were the adults in the audience weren't acting like adults and were heckling and laughing at this poor kid. And you can disagree. That's fine, but you don't have to laugh and heckle at somebody. You don't have to make somebody, sometimes the effort is to make somebody feel inferior or feel stupid for having a certain opinion or thought, and whether we agree with their thought or not, okay, especially when we don't agree. We may have very good reasons for not agreeing with a certain position or certain thought process, but we have to be aware of the example that we set. That we don't set an example that is one that is dismissive, that is disrespectful, certainly not one that would throw a stumbling block or bring any type of repudiation or a bad example for those who claim to be Christians, those who claim to be members of the Lord's body. And so that was just something I was thinking about. I read the article, and I really wasn't reading the article for daily devotional type of thought process. I was just reading it because I was interested, and it just kind of occurred to me, that could be any of us. And when we're with others who think the way we do politically, it could be very easy for us to be part of the group that's laughing and heckling this poor young man without even thinking about what we're doing in the moment. So important that we redeem in the time that we have in our communities and around those who are in who those who are within our sphere of influence, those who we can impact for good, to make sure we're not actually impacting them for bad. All right, that's the daily devotional for you today. Just something to think about, to just be aware of ourselves, be aware of the things we say and how we say them when we're with our coworkers, our classmates. We can have our opinions, there's nothing wrong with that, but we need to be careful how we go about expressing them, how far we go in expressing them, so as we don't take attention away from what's most important. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're anti-vax or anti-masks or pro-vax, pro-masks. It matters if your soul is right with God. Ultimately, all boils down to the nuts and bolts here. That's what's important. That's what matters. And that's what we need to put first. All right, our next day of the devotional, Lord willing, will be Thursday at 6:30. I hope to see you all then. Thanks, everybody.